Welcome to the BumbleKast. I'm your host, Ian Flynn, the Bumble King, and joining me as always is that secret project from the Weckman X program, Kyle Kraus.
Ooh, yeah, I got claws and everything. It's pretty cool.
I've seen them.
Yeah.
They're like butter knives, but they're there.
Sure. I don't use them very often. Maybe when I need to cut a biscuit.
You can butter like 3 pieces of bread at the same time. It's really impressive.
Yeah. I mean, most toasters only hold 2 pieces of bread, so it's kind of pointless, but still.
Oh, have you been, sir?
I'm hanging in there. How are you doing?
Hanging by a toenail, but I'm hanging.
Yeah, well, we'll hang together.
Yeah, we will. So before we get to the main topic of the show, we've got a few updates, a few notes about the BumbleKast and everything in it. Number one of the Patreon perks that we've had since the beginning is a quick link in the YouTube videos that goes straight to the Q&A. Because, let's be realistic, that's what most folks are here for.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of you stay because you love us and we love you back. But, we understand. We understand what kind of relationship this is. Starting May 2nd, YouTube is taking away that feature, and they're not replacing it with anything, which is just dandy. So we're going to be having links in the description below that will jump to the Q&A because we want to maintain that perk, because we want to maintain your loyalty and all that stuff. So It won't be as nice as before, but we have already begun taking steps to, alleviate that. If YouTube introduces something that works similarly to the annotations, we'll start using those. But just so you know, in a few months' time, that's what we're going to be doing. Number 2, we have a coupon going on for the Bumble store. If you're listening to this on Monday, you have until the 4th to get this done. It's 15% off any purchase, and that coupon code is 15P417.
Okay.
So that saves you a few dollars and puts a couple in our pocket.
15P417.
That's what I said.
I was hoping it would be like Bumble 15 or Bumble Swag or I don't know.
Sadly, we're not in a position to make fun codes like that just yet. But baby steps.
Yes. Maybe if some people buy a few things at the Bumble store, it'll help us out, and we'll be able to make fun coupon codes.
Maybe. Number 3, before we get to the winner of today's BumbleRaffle, there are some folks who have not received their prize yet. That's in part because I haven't been able to mail it out yet, and in part because some folks haven't sent us their contact info. If we haven't contacted you, please say, hey, where's my prize? We'll get that fixed. If you haven't gotten back to us, please do, because, you earned it by listening, and we like you. And if you have been contacted and I haven't sent it yet, I'm sorry, I'm working on it, just busy. But if you're missing your prize, just shoot an email over to BumbleKast@yahoo.com. We'll get it all sorted out. Now, if you're confused about what the BumbleRaffle is, it is a draw we have on every show. Patrons over at patreon.com/BumbleKast are automatically entered into every drawing, and everyone else can write in per episode to be added to the draw. Everyone's got the same chances, but those on Patreon, they don't have to write in every 2 weeks. So, this week's winner is...
Let's go, bub.
John M.
Congratulations, John. We will be contacting you to get your address so we can send you a signed book.
Yes. You can read that book. You can frame that book. You can admire that book. You can do all sorts of things with that book. Books are not just meant to be read,
No, they're used for swatting down flies and lining bird cages, too.
Sure. Weighing down bookshelves to make sure they don't fly away.
Mm-hmm.
It's very important, especially as we become a low gravity world, which may happen at some point. I don't know when, but you never know. You never
You
know.
got to prepare.
Yes,
You got to be ready for anything.
Absolutely.
Moving on to the main portion of the show. A certain movie came out recently, and if you couldn't catch by the subtle intro, we're talking about Logan.
The
Part
final
3.
The final
Yes.
Wolverine movie,
And if he's to
ostensibly.
be believed, the last Hugh Jackman Wolverine movie. I'm sure there will be others because this is a gold mine, but
Yeah. There probably will be.
going in, this will be a spoilery episode. So if you haven't seen it yet, stop listening. Go watch the movie. It's worth seeing blind. You really do need to just go into it with no spoiler. Oh, it's a good movie.
Yeah.
But
Our
we're going to be talking freely about it.
Yeah, our top of the hour recommendation is stop now and go see it if you have not. We highly recommend it. So
Yes.
we're both very positive on this movie. So
Oh, yes. So if you're still here, all right, cool. Now, Kyle, have you seen the entire Wolverine trilogy?
I have not actually. I haven't seen the first or the second one. From what I understand,
Okay.
the first one is not worth bothering with, and the second one is okay.
That's pretty much it. The first one is hot garbage.
Okay.
I haven't seen it in one full sitting, just bits and pieces, but really, the video game tie-in was far superior, and that should tell you how bad it was.
Oh boy.
Actually, the video game shares with Logan the fact that it is just brutally violent and gets the point that your character is a never-dying, blade-fisted berserker. So,
Yeah.
The second one I got to see a couple days before Logan, as a matter of fact, and it's not bad. It's definitely watchable and enjoyable, and it has the unenviable task of taking the Wolverine in Japan story arcs
Yeah.
and trying to make them make sense.
Difficult task.
So to that degree, I think it deserves a gold star. I think the biggest problem with The Wolverine, which is the second movie,
Mm-hmm.
is that it's not really a Wolverine movie. It's about an heiress whose father is passed over by their inventor or grandfather, her boyfriend, who is part of a ninja clan that's been protecting her family for generations, and this sinister plot involving the Minister of Defense and the Yakuza trying to eliminate her in this big rigmarole that ultimately leads to an immortality bid that's really kind of interesting. It's just Wolverine's kind of there.
Huh.
I mean, he factors into it. It's not like he's completely shoehorned in, but
Sure.
you could remove him fairly easily and still have an interesting story.
Mm-hmm.
And the main villain of the whole thing kind of feels like we needed a supervillain, so there she is.
Is it kind of like they just put him in just because he is Wolverine? So like he's the name that people will get in. That
Kind
will
of,
get people
sorta.
into the seats.
Kind of, sort of. I mean, it does take cues from the Wolverine in Japan storylines,
Well, sure, yeah.
but I really feel like the story was strong enough without him in it.
Mm-hmm.
He does a fantastic job with it, and he doesn't feel totally superfluous.
Sure. The way you describe it makes me think of his role in Days of Future Past.
Yeah, a little bit like that. One thing I was impressed, though, is that it takes place mostly in Japan, and it actually feels like Japan. It doesn't feel like, here is the mystical Far East with these strange people and strange customs. It's Japan. These are modern people living in a modern city. These are real issues and real personal interactions. It didn't feel like, here they're speaking Japanese, just so you know it's Japan, wink, wink. They're in Japan. They speak Japanese.
And
that's how it's done there.
And it wasn't necessarily all just filmed on a soundstage somewhere.
Right. It also didn't feel like Wolverine was the great white hope to save the poor Asian people. It was Logan gets dragged into this situation and knifes people with his hands because that's what he does.
Right. That's all he can do.
Now, comparing the fighting in the Wolverine to Logan really, for me, underlines why they needed an R rating for the third film. Because comparing the two is apples and oranges. It makes the second film almost look cartoonish in the way that he's flailing and stabbing, and there's no blood. You see nothing flying. It's all cutaway shots.
Uh-huh.
Whereas Logan, I was worried at first when they said they were going for the R rating, because I thought they were just riding on the coattails of Deadpool. But the violence works.
Yeah.
It's used as a tool for setting the scene and the mood and the horror of this really bleak story. But it's used effectively. It's not gore for gore's sake. It is, these are very violent people doing very violent things to one another.
Yes. The feeling I got throughout most of it was that this was a movie made out of love and respect for the character and for the source material, rather than just, kind of a cash grab or anything. It was rated R because it needed to be in order for Logan to be Logan, finally. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just rated R just because it could be, or just because Deadpool was rated R and that was successful, so we'll do it. Mm-hmm. We'll do it that way. So, yeah, it blew me away, quite frankly. It's really good.
I mean, it was exactly what I wanted it to be. It was a character study.
Yeah.
It was horribly sad.
Yeah.
But in that kind of beautiful sadness sort of way. Well, maybe not even that, because I guess I would attribute better to other movies. This was just a bleak, terrible story, but it also felt like closure.
Right. Yeah, it definitely is a good closure in it, for sure.
Now, Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart, being the brilliant stage actors that they are.
Oh, man, oh, man.
The chemistry they have in this is unparalleled. They always were great in their respective roles as Xavier and Logan in all the other movies. But here it felt like they were actual actors on a set, interacting not just as characters, but as professionals. And that alone was a treat to behold.
And it felt realistic. It felt believable. The interaction between the two of them. It's like, yeah, this is what Wolverine would do in old age with Professor X. This is how he would take care of him. This is what would happen. It's just, man, it's great.
And I think the breakout star, because we know Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart are phenomenal,
right?
But the breakout star had to be Daphne King, who played Laura, aka X-23.
Yes.
She was phenomenal.
She is so brutal. It's awesome.
Well, yeah, I mean, the wire foo was fantastic.
Well, yeah, but even I'm not discounting her acting abilities at all, which were fantastic. But just her, she's so fierce. She really captures that spirit of Wolverine, like, to a T.
I mean, I was worried that they were casting X-23 so young because good child actors are hard to find. And if they even approached the level of viciousness that a tiny Wolverine clone should have, I worried that she would come across more like having a tantrum. You wouldn't be able to take it seriously. But no. She nails it. Everything about what she did, start to finish in that film, was spectacular.
You do not want to mess with her, man. This is not a tantrum you want to try to get in the middle of. Oh, boy. No,
it didn't feel like a tantrum, though. It felt like someone who was trained to murder people, and she did it.
Yeah, she felt like a true freaking monstrous assassin, and it was amazing.
And at the same time, the level of nuance she had in her silent moments, the genuine nature of her passion when she's trying to convince Logan to rescue her friends, or when she's firing up when he's dying, all of it felt like a real person reacting to these situations. And to do it so young.
Yeah.
Everybody did a great job. There was no bad acting in the entire thing, but she alone, for being so young and having such a weird role to play, and it's her first major role. It's her first real credit on IMDb.
Yeah,
that's just how. Where did they find her? How? What? I want her to play everything in every movie now.
Yeah. I think casting her young was a really good idea, because it means that if they want to bring X-23 into more movies, they have a long time to be able to follow her. And I really hope they do, and that they stick with her casting, because she is excellent, and I love X-23, so I hope we do see more of her.
I also loved the themes that they had with Logan himself, because you have him trying to redeem his past in X-23. You have this younger version of himself, more or less.
Right.
And him trying to stop her from becoming himself.
Mm-hmm.
You have him in the present, the culmination of all the heartache and all the drama and all the loss and all the sacrifice. And then you have X-24, who I'm pretty sure they styled to look like Sabretooth, which was fantastic.
The intention...
The embodiment...
Yeah, the intention was for that to actually be Sabretooth, was my understanding, but they ended up changing it to be a X-24 direct clone of Hugh Jackman.
See, I like that better, because that's the culmination of everything he didn't want to be.
Right.
It's the monster that they tried to make him and that he resisted.
Yeah.
And then they actually took that stupid adamantium bullet from the first Wolverine movie and made it into the really cathartic climax. They took one of the dumbest ideas in the franchise and made it work. Oh, this movie, Kyle. This movie.
See, I never saw that first movie, so I didn't even know that happened. But here's the thing. You don't have to. You don't have... There is nothing... There is no reason to see any of the previous movies, really. I mean, maybe you could see the first two X-Men movies and you'll probably be fine.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because they do reference X-Men 1, the first movie with... Statue of Liberty incident, but that's a pretty passing reference. Mm-hmm. So that was the only thing I caught. I know there's probably a lot more references, so I'm kind of out of it. I know, well, he did go to like Alkali Lake, right? Is that
right?
Was that where it was? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So he went back to Alkali Lake. So you got X-Men 2, and yeah. Really, you just have to follow kind of the movies that follow Wolverine mainly. So X-Men 1, X-Men 2,
Ignore 3.
And then ignore the... You pretty much just ignore everything after that. Maybe you see the Wolverine if you want to, and then you'll be fine.
Funny thing about the Wolverine, and I think the only mention it got in Logan was at one point you see a sword hanging up, and a sword that was gifted to him by one of the characters. The after credits teaser bit in the Wolverine has Magneto and Xavier show up, and it basically kind of hand waves X-Men 3 and goes, yeah, never mind. We're moving on to Days of Future Past now.
Right.
Another bit of trivia that I was tickled by. X-23 originated in the cartoon series X-Men Evolution.
Correct.
There was an extended bit of backstory that never made it into the final cut of the episode, in which the lead researcher that created her explained why she had the 2 claws on the hand and the 1 on the feet, and made the parallel to the Lionesses and their role in the Pride.
Mm-hmm.
I don't particularly buy that myself, but it was a nice attempt at pseudoscience.
Mm-hmm.
It never was released except on like one fan forum that I'm aware of. Cut to Logan, and Patrick Stewart, Xavier, is the one who brings up that idea explaining her claws. And it's like, that's neat! If you're really, elbow deep into the stuff, you get the reference, but otherwise, it kind of seamlessly fits with the rest of the film.
Mm-hmm. From my understanding, the comic changes that idea a bit, but...
Yeah, I've not read...
I think it's more like it's a surgical thing where they took the center claw from her hand and put it in her foot, which seems kind of weird and dumb. But I kind of prefer just her having that rather than it being something they surgically did, because why would you do that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
I mean, I haven't read all of Laura's stories in the comics, but from my understanding, they kind of missed the mark on a few occasions.
Yeah, from what I understand too. But I've also heard really good things about the all-new Wolverine, the current ongoing, which is Laura as Wolverine now, since Wolverine is, spoiler alert, dead. It's a comic. He'll be back. But
I don't know. They've got so many Wolverine clones running around at this point.
Exactly.
But,
yeah, you don't
they'll find a way.
You don't really need to worry about it. I'm pretty sure the cover of one of the all new Wolverine paperbacks has like 3 Wolverine clones on it. It's like, okay, all right. We don't need the real Wolverine because we got a billion Wolverines running around already. I do have to mention the scene at the house in the middle of the movie. Mm-hmm. The dinner scene especially was a really good way to break up the absolute crushing darkness that the movie had up to that point.
Which only served to make the rest of the crushing depressing even worse.
Yeah, yes it did. Man, they executed that so well. And there was a lot of execution in that scene too. So yeah.
All right, fess up. Did you cry at any point?
I didn't. But, I mean, there were definitely points where it was definitely a very, very sad pit-in-your-stomach feeling. Where I'm guessing you cried a bit, too.
I lost it when they're burying Xavier, and I'm going to not be able to talk about it too much because I'm going to start while we're recording.
Yeah.
And Logan can't say anything.
Yeah.
It's like, there's water, and he's breaking down, and I'm already getting started. Anyway.
It was... Just the reaction that it's sold absolutely beautifully. It's like, yes, you are Wolverine. I mean, you're doing what he would do. I fully and 100% believe that this is what happened and that you're feeling like you're just absolutely miserable.
And it's the helplessness and the tragedy of it.
Right.
You know he wants to do good, but he can't, and he knows that he can't. And it's that, it's the layers that are just within that, 2 minutes of scene. The fact that Laura reaches out to him and he can't accept it. It was everything I wanted it to be. It was a horribly tragic film, and I love it for it.
The one thing I like about it, it's at the ending, the very end of the film. Obviously, is also a very, very sad moment. Mm. But it's also finally... Because throughout the movie, Logan keeps talking about how, like, everyone around him has died. Everyone around him ends up in tragedy. It's like everything he causes, anything he's part of is tragic. But the final act of his life is to basically free mutant children, get them to safety, and to start a whole new generation of mutants, practically, because most of them were dead. But now this new generation of mutants has ran to safety, and because of him, they were able to get away. So the final act of his life was to basically save mutant kind, and he finally gets his due as a true hero and not as someone who feels like he's failed for his entire life.
Mm-hmm. And thematically, he makes his way home back to Canada because that's where Laura goes. And,
right.
Oh, it just fits together so well.
Yes, it's so good.
And the special effects. Before we get to that, one minor thing that I want to mention is I loved the near future tech and the way it was displayed. Yeah. The self-driving trucks, the way that everything looked fairly modern, but with little tweaks here and there to make you think, oh, this is actually 2027. Was it 2027?
Something like that? Yeah, it's like a very...
The near future.
It's a very like 10, 15 years, somewhere around there. Yeah, it's not very long.
So we got the future without it being the future.
Yeah. It's very subtle. It's a very subtle thing, but it works really well.
But the special effects were fantastic, and one of the things that Wolverine has suffered from in all the films is kind of lazy wire-fu, and not in this film. Yep. You had him, and especially Laura, flipping all over the place, and it felt very natural.
Yeah.
I don't know how they did the Logan X-24 fights, because that's Hugh Jackman pretty beefed up.
Yeah.
I don't know what he did, but I need to get on that diet.
He's got a stunt double. His stunt double is very very convincing.
But at no point did it feel like he was fighting a green screen.
Right. I don't think he was. I'm pretty sure that a lot of it was practical. It was just for scenes where you see both of them from the front. Obviously, couldn't really do that, but digital recreation of his face, which they're getting freakishly good at doing now.
Yeah, that's especially spooky,
especially for non-speaking roles. It works really well.
Yeah, I guess all they needed was take a freeze frame of him growling, and that was everything X-24 did.
That's pretty much, yeah.
And also kudos to the team for writing a story about a character who is notoriously difficult to kill and making his death not feel cheap or contrived.
Yeah.
I mean, they spend the whole movie establishing that he is dying at this point, that he has run out of time.
Mm-hmm.
That the miracle Kool-Aid syringe was not meant to be abused the way he did. And just the disparity between after he's juiced up to save the kids and he looks young and vigorous, and I think his hair color actually goes back to fully black instead of with the pepper gray.
Mm-hmm.
And then it wears off and he looks wiry and worn out and he can barely stand. And it's perfect.
It's just run ragged at that point, but it's yeah. The one thing I have to really, I also have to give credit for is that in order to get this movie made, like pretty much everyone involved took a pretty big pay cut because they believed in the project and they wanted to make it. It was definitely, it felt like a passion project rather than just a money-making cash grab. I mean, they knew it was going to make money. It's got Wolverine's name on it. It's an X-Men thing. They knew it was going to make money, but it still felt very, like they actually were doing this because they love doing this.
They did it right.
Yes, they love making movies, and they knew this movie was going to be something worth doing, regardless of how much they were getting paid. So I definitely have to appreciate that, too.
One question I did have was at the end of the movie, the whole point was they were going to kill the children.
Mm-hmm.
So why did they capture them?
I don't know. Probably so they could kill them, make extra kill them, make sure they were dead. Make sure they were dead. They wanted to catch them.
They're out in the middle of the wilderness. It's not like they had to cover up anything.
Maybe they had like a really good child crushing machine back at their wherever they are, and they wanted to take them back and use that because, come on, when you have the budget and you buy a child crushing machine, you want to use it.
Well, absolutely. You have to validate the cost.
Yes, exactly. You really have to think about these things economically. I mean, if you're gonna be a supervillain and you're going to build a giant child-crushing machine to crush maybe potentially hundreds of children at once, you want to make sure it works first. And then second, you want to make sure you get your money's worth. Right? I mean, come on. If I were a supervillain, that's what I would do.
Okay, so note to self, Kyle would be the worst supervillain ever.
Hey,
not by effectiveness, but by sheer level of evil.
I'm joking, by the way.
No. I'm quite disturbed at this point.
You should not crush children. We do.
That's the lesson of this whole episode.
My opinions do not represent the opinions of Bumble King Comics and the BumbleKast.
So, in summation, on a scale of 1 to 10, Logan is about a 25.
Yeah, thereabouts. No, it's really good. I hate to be like hype it up and be like, oh man, it's so great, it's so awesome, but it really is that good. We definitely loved it. I mean, you could probably poke holes in it. I'm sure you can poke holes in anything, but you don't want to. As a complete package, yeah, it just works. And that's really just where it comes down to. And I'm hoping that we will get more stories of this style. I don't want to see them start shoehorning in characters that otherwise don't really call for the rated R or for heavy violence, but for characters that do, I would definitely like to start seeing some of that happen going forward.
Treating these characters as characters with their own stories and not lumping them into the superhero genre.
Right. And we're getting deviations from that sort of the feel that sort of the Marvel movies have been going for, and the X-Men movies and stuff like that. So yeah, breaking out some of these characters and getting them into their own movies and having their own tone, to me, is great regardless. Or, getting their own Netflix shows, which that's kind of Marvel's rated R side. And also pretty excellent most all the way around. Right now I'm only 3 episodes deep into Iron Fist, and it's all right, but the other shows are pretty solid. So I think you can get a bit dark, and people will still like it. So.
All right, so let's move on to the most popular portion of our show, the Q&A. And of course, we're going to go with our sponsored, Patreon-supported, superlative, positive word. What's the word I'm looking for, Kyle?
Priority Q&A.
Priority Q&A.
Yes. You get priority if you give us money. How about that? That's a great deal. That's a great exchange, isn't it? I think it's
pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. Of course, if you want to ask questions, you can email us at BumbleKast@yahoo.com, tweet us using the hashtag BumbleKast, or leave us a comment or a message on Patreon, and we'll get to it. This first question in the priority Q&A queue comes from Chris A. Do Dr. Eggman, Orbot, and Cubot still have their memories from the pre-SGW continuity?
No, they do not. Nobody does. That was established in the first arc of the new continuity. It began with people having conflicting memories, but all the old ones faded away. It's gone.
It's like that time ripple effect in Back to the Future.
Yeah, kind of.
Where it's like you remember things at first, and then they kind of start to fade away. It's kind of weird. Except people don't fade away in your book, in the Sonic book, do they?
No, not yet.
Not outright.
Not yet.
They don't outright.
Yeah, I'm not teasing. I have no idea.
Okay. Next one comes from Michael B. Is Gigalopolis being on South Island and as such part of the Acorn Kingdom canon to the comics? Could that imply that there are humans who live in the Acorn Kingdom? Could there also be humans who live directly in Mobotropolis?
Now, here I think there's a little bit of confusion in terms of terminology, which is completely understandable. This is not the Gigaopolis that was in the old continuity, which was some random overlander city. And depending on what you were reading was the capital or not, it was messy. The Gigapolis that is referenced in the new continuity comes from the Game Gear Sonic game, and thus is a zone within South Island. So it's not the same thing. And wow, you got to be a big nerd to be able to make that distinction. That being said, it is not impossible for there to be humans living in the Kingdom of Acorn, whether it's the surrounding islands or within the capital Mobotropolis itself. But it is not the quote-unquote human city. It's just a city. Nothing particularly special about it.
All right. And this last priority question comes from Sam Cybercat. Since Sonic R is gloriously canon, how likely are we to see it adapted into the comics?
No priority to it, but it could be fun as like maybe a 1 or 2-parter. I don't know. Depends if the opportunity arises.
If it's canon, we might as well.
Well, sure. I mean, any excuse to have Metal, Knuckles, and Tails doll show up again.
Well, that's true. So long as so long as like every line of dialogue is a lyrical reference to the Sonic R soundtrack, we'll be good.
Oh, you know me.
I know
I cannot resist the references.
Okay, well then every line better be a reference. I don't know how that's gonna work.
Well, they're just running around the street and noticing that everybody's living in the city.
Well, there you go.
That's how you got to survive.
Uh-huh.
You got to keep the dream alive.
Yes. And when you're in the city, can you feel the sunshine?
Well, it brightens up my day.
Well, I need to run away.
Because everybody's supersonic racing. All right, no, we're going to do the whole soundtrack of Heat this up.
Speaking of running away, let's run into the standard Q&A. This first one comes from Uwai. Me and several people had a discussion about obscure characters in the Bumble King forums and talked about a character named Piano. I know you were already planning to add W. Waltz, but if you had the option, would you have used her and for what role?
That is entirely up to Capcom. Case in point, Waltz was supposed to show up in Mega Man number 54, along with the other teases in the setup for Mega Man 4, but we got the kibosh on that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas other characters were able to be approved. So, since the hiatus was coming up, we didn't fight it, because what's the point of fighting over a cameo character when you know that you aren't going to be able to follow up on it immediately? So if and when Mega Man starts up again, I'm going to be championing Waltz to show up again, because I think there's a lot of fun things to do with her. As for Piano, I'd have to look more deeply into who she is and where she falls into stuff, because she doesn't immediately spring to mind. It's been a while since I've been brushed up on my Mega Man lore. But if I could figure out something neat to do with her, and more importantly, if Capcom would allow it, then sure, she might show up. But no promises.
It's from the Ariga. She's from the Ariga books. That's Piano. Okay. Yeah, it's one of his characters, so I don't know if you'd even be able to go near that.
In that case, probably not. Just because I'm not sure the legalities of it. But
right.
I don't know. We can always, hey, can we use Piano? No. Okay. Can we use Piano? Sure. Okay. Whatever.
Can we use Piano? Who? Next question comes from Richard V. Do you think there's a place for the SatAM/comic characters in the games?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
I'm going to say yes, because Sonic games have loads of characters already, so why not stuff a few more in?
That's the thing, though. The game canon cast is so large that they already don't really have room for most of them.
Right.
Except for walk-on cameo roles, which ticks off their respective fan bases.
Yeah.
So, as an extended cast, like crowd scenes or characters within the extended universe, I would say maybe. I mean, we certainly designed them to be that way. But
sure.
As playable characters, which is what I think Richard's really going for, should they be in the games for realsies? I don't know, because a lot of them don't necessarily translate into unique play styles that would fit within the Sonic formula. I've seen tons of fan ideas on how to implement them in a game mechanic. My personal favorites out there are a Metal Gear Revengeance style gameplay for Antoine, which would just be absolutely nuts.
Oh, jeez. That would be crazy.
Or just, flying around and blasting things as Bunny. That would be, kind of an aerial version of Gamma or Eggman. That would be great, but those styles aren't necessarily Sonic.
Sure.
The different game styles in Sonic Adventure and Sonic Adventure 2 didn't necessarily sit well with a lot of people, and they haven't really been used since those games.
Mm-hmm.
Which is too bad, because I absolutely adore blowing things up as Eggman. But I think in Sonic Runners, that mobile game that really should have lasted longer than it did, I absolutely adored it, aside from the price points. But I think that would probably be where they work best, because the gameplay was so simple and any changes were minute enough that you wouldn't really wreck the gameplay, but you could have the diversity. You could have a bajillion characters, and that was the fun, just collecting all the characters that mostly played the same.
Mm-hmm.
If they were in a large format game, kind of like Tales of Link or Fire Emblem Heroes, where the idea is you have the core franchise, but the gameplay doesn't really rely on the franchise's style, but just the pure cavalcade of characters, maybe they would work in that way. But in your traditional, like, Sonic Mania or Sonic Resistance style game, I'm not quite sure they would fit. But I'm not a game developer, so what do I know?
There are a few, I guess the term would be ROM hacks, that place like Sally as a playable character in like Sonic 1.
Sure.
And they actually do adjust the gameplay type, so it's more in line with her rather than just a sprite swap for Sonic. And it actually works fairly well. It's a different type, makes it a bit of a different type of game. So I've played around with them with a lot of ROM hacks a little bit, but hey, they are apparently allowed now since they're officially on the Steam Workshop, and you can use them with the Sega Classics collection on Steam.
Really?
Officially, so yeah.
Huh?
Yep. It's pretty interesting, actually. Sega seems to have kind of somewhat embraced ROM hacks.
Instead of slapping them down with cease and desists.
Right. Yeah.
Nintendo.
It's like as long as you've paid for this, sure. Mess around with it. Screw with it. We don't care.
And I know I haven't really experienced a ton of ROM hacks, but I know what's out there is really, really impressive.
There is some really cool stuff out there that I like quite a bit. So, yeah, it might be something worth exploring if you want to see how some other people's interpretations of how characters would play in the 2D Sonic style, at least.
Sure.
All right, and finally, last question comes from Emery K. Do the roboticized Mobians make Dr. Eggman's badniks in his factories as his roboticized slaves?
Sure. When they existed, they did all sorts of manual labor and such because that's what robots are for. It's cheap labor. But there are currently no roboticized Mobians in the new continuity, so you can't do with what you ain't got.
Eggman needs to get on that.
Well, we're working on it. We just need, the comic to tell those stories.
He's just give these cyborg types. They still have their free will. That's not good.
Right.
We can't have that.
No, but you also have things like initiative and cowering and fear, which robots just don't do unless programmed to, and that takes a little bit of the fun out of it.
I guess that's true. It's less fun to harass them, I suppose.
I mean, have you ever tried yelling at your toaster? It doesn't really react.
No, but Orbot and Cubot seem to recoil in fear.
That's true, but that's because they're programmed to, and that's what makes them special.
Okay. All right, and that's going to do it for this edition of the Q&A and this edition of the BumbleKast.
Before we wrap it up, we're going to give a big shout-out to all the patrons who continue to support the show and make it possible. A big thank you to Daniel H., Zephyr Flame, Chris A., Damo, Dwiz Dizdin, John B., Sam Cybercat, Deus Miles, Mike B., Fancy Fool, Connell T., Samuel P., Justin G., Jennifer R., Frobman, DeLuna 13, Candy, for now, Andrew F., John M., congratulations again on the BumbleRaffle win, S. Jovanovic 9X, Alex P., and James K.
Awesome. You are all the best ever that we know of. Thank you. I mean, really, thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Until next time, you can catch me over at bumbleking.com or on Twitter at IanFlynnBKC.
And you can find me at KyleJCRB on Twitter, or you can head on over to kngi.org where you can find what I'm doing, archived episodes of this show, and many others, including my regular weekly video game music show, Game Fuel, streaming live every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on 8bitx.com, and of course archived on kngi.org.
We will see you next week for the very last episode of American Truck Simulator on BumbleKast Gaming, and then in 2 weeks for BumbleKast episode 41.
Bye!
Number 3, before we announce today's bundle...
Today's BumbleRaffle.
We were doing so well. Okay.
It's all good. Don't worry. Hey, thanks for listening to the BumbleKast. If you like the show, be sure to hit that subscribe button and consider supporting us on Patreon. We have some great rewards, as well as big plans to make the show even better. Also, rate and review the show on iTunes. It gets more folks listening and really helps us out, so we definitely appreciate it. Original music by Ken Coda Snyder, used with permission. Find more of his music at bc.s3m.us and find the theme song at noisechanradio.bandcamp.com. Available as a pay-what-you-want download. Are you waiting for me to say it because I don't know it?
No, I'm looking it up.
Okay. I was like, do I go here? I only saw that we had it in here. I didn't see what it was.
No, sorry, I thought it would be a quick find, but it's not.
The code is get you some Bumble.